The tension of the Steinway piano, you have a cast iron frame inside that has the tension, and you have the bass strings crossed over the tenor strings like this. All the earlier pianos like these are straight strung, the strings run parallel. The grain of the wood runs from front treble to back rear. You have an Erard repetition action, a so-called double escapement. This is in all pianos, okay? Bösendorfer, Yamaha, what you want. And you have hammers that are large and covered with felt. Now, what are the positive attributes of this? Well, it simulates an orchestra and has a fantastically wide dynamic range. The cross-stringing favors bringing out of individual voices. Let me demonstrate quickly. Something you can do on a piano like this. You really can't hear the notes I'm playing in the right hand, only their sort of flavor. Its slow developing tone is superior for simulating long legato lines, such as this. Sorry. Sorry. Obviously, this is imitating a vocal line, and the Steinway recipe seems to make the sound carry for a very long time. Where am I here? Negative attributes. The cross-strung bass is muddy, and it lacks clarity and focus. Now, here's the so-called Pathétique sonata. Turn off the amp for this. I think it distorts it. There are seven notes there. This is just muddy. Nobody writes for a piano with a chord like that. The other thing about it, by the way, is you notice it says FP, Fortepiano. Czerny, Beethoven's student, said that he waited till the sound went away. So basically, the gesture here is dee, ta-dum, ta-da. And of course, if I try to wait here, you have to wait a long time, okay? Equal distribution of voices creates unpleasant, confusing sound picture. And that, here is a sonata by Mozart. There are two voices there. You could have a violin and a cello or a flute and a bassoon, but clearly the left hand is just as important in the right hand, and you wouldn't have the violinist doing this and the violinist doing that. If you do that on a piano like this, it sounds like this. And so nobody, of course, plays that way, so they play. And you get this lovely sort of Baroque angel kind of Mozart. But you know, when I hear a thing like that, it just seems to me very, very strange. As I say, you have the violin playing like this and the cello sort of hovering behind the curtain. Okay. This is rather interesting. Anton Rubinstein was a famous composer and pianist in the 19th century. And in 1892, he wrote a book where he interviews himself. You know, the interviewer says things. And the interviewer says, don't you think that our modern pianos, by now most people had pianos like this, that our modern piano is superior for all music? And he says, I think instruments from every period have effects and colors that cannot be reproduced on today's pianos, that compositions were always conceived with the instruments of their time in mind, and only on those can they achieve their full effect. Played on today's instruments, they sound at a disadvantage. Unvorteilhaft. Now, Arthur Rubinstein, the great pianist of the 20th century, would never have said this. Because Arthur Rubinstein grew up only with this, whereas Anton Rubinstein grew up with this and everything else. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop talking and play for you, but this is an example. For those of you who cannot read music, don't worry. Because we're not going to look at the notes, we're going to look at these marks. These are called articulation slurs. And what they are is they tell you how to articulate the music. Because music is like speech and must be articulated properly. There are no languages in the world that are spoken like this. And these are things that tell us not to play da 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 da, but rather ti da ti da ti da ti da ta, ti da da ti da da ti da da ti da da ti da da, because everything under a slur is connected, and the end of the slur is always weak. Now, now, I think that's what this music is about. It's about ti-da, 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 ti-da-da. You will not find any recording by anybody in the 20th century playing a piano like this, because it sounds like this if I do that. No musical person would do that. Now, why does it sound like this? Because the modern piano, that's why the Chopin Nocturne is so successful. The modern piano, the sound actually increases. So you have D, so it's like going D, yuck, D, yuck. So you're cutting something off just as it's developing. And so nobody does it. So again, and I think it's at least worth asking a question, is that still Mozart's music? Maybe it is.